All right, it's Halsey Scheider with the Helicopter Podcast, and I am live from Verticon. I just slipped and I called it the former name, but I'm really proud of myself because I've actually been spot on with VAI Verticon in all my social media and all the posting. Guys, welcome to the show. So excited to have Ascent Aerosystems chatting. This is admittedly a topic that I'm not super familiar with. It's not really in my line of sight. I did own a drone one time. Before I was in helicopter sales, I was a roof salesman, and I used a drone to help kind of map out people's roofs there in Texas after a hailstorm. So I do have some practical experience with drones, but this is just super exciting. First and foremost, let's just start with some introductions.
Sure.
Peter, we're going to start with you. You're the CEO of Ascent, the guy that started it, the mastermind, the mad genius, maybe? How do you?
Well, one of three, but thanks for that. Glad to be here. So, yeah, we started Ascent Aerosystems, it was late 2014. And my background, my first career was actually as a professional pilot. I'm a fixed-wing guy. I was a flight instructor, all civilian. Ended up flying Challengers and Gulfstreams for a Fortune 50 company. But I've been a radio control airplane and helicopter nerd my whole life. So I learned to fly RC helicopters back in, believe it or not, the early 80s.
Okay.
So when this stuff started happening, I was kind of nerding out. I have a workshop. I was kind of nerding out on it. And I got sort of inspired on the coaxial concept, but I'm not an engineer. And so I was tinkering around, and I came across these young engineers that had posted some stuff online. And I was like, this is really neat. So I reached out to John and Nate Maringer, and we became business partners. We started the company in 2014, and here we are, 10, 11 years later. We got acquired by Robinson last year.
Yeah, so I'm super excited to talk about the coaxial design. I'm excited to talk about the relationship with Robinson.
Yep.
That's big news from last year. But Amber, we'll start with you. Just give us a little background. Why are you joining this conversation? We've actually talked. If you haven't checked out the podcast I did with Amber in the past, please do. It was really fun. But yeah, Amber, just a little intro of what you're doing here today.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
First of all.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm Amber Harrison. I am now the Director of Regulatory Affairs at VAI. It is absolutely a dream job. As you know, I'm a commercially rated helicopter pilot. So I love the industry, passionate about our members, passionate about the industry, passionate about helping propel us forward in whatever way that this little lawyer mind can do it. And just really thrilled to be here to give a little bit of background on myself. And I know we went over this on your podcast.
It's perfect.
So,
Retouch it.
Yeah. I've always been obsessed with flight, and I realized I watched Peter Pan for the first time with my 3-year-old as an adult, and I realized
Cartoon version.
Of course, like
okay.
the 1953
Love
version.
It. Yep.
But I realized that is what started my obsession with flight. I literally put 2 and 2 together a few weeks ago as I was watching it with my daughter. And I, from that young age have just been on a mission to fly myself. And so eventually I got older and got the opportunity and more importantly, the finances. And I made it happen as a helicopter pilot. And now I just get to live my absolute dreams, representing the industry, aiding the industry, and also getting to fly any opportunity I get.
Yeah, it's so fun. In fact, I was talking to Amy when we were setting this up, and hey, Amber Harrison's going to join and this and that. I'm like, God, man, that name sounds familiar. And I was like, Amy, can you send me a bio just so I can incorporate it in my questions? And then on the plane, I had a light bulb. I'm like, oh, I know Amber. And so that was a small world, and it's, of course, great to catch up. And I didn't know that you were at VAI now, so that was a fun thing to learn. Fly-ins the other day, it was great to see you, and we had a good time. You do have some background in the drone space, though, so just talk a little bit about that real fast.
Absolutely, yes. So, I've kind of spent my career in a couple of different areas in aviation, supply chain, trade compliance, on airplanes, helicopters, and UAS, right? So doing some regulatory work most recently with Zipline. So helping them really establish their presence here, expand their scalability within the United States for their drone delivery system. So, yeah.
You're plenty qualified to be. I'm not qualified to be in this podcast, to be honest. So you're plenty qualified. You're more than qualified. Maybe Rob's a little bit more on my level, but Rob, good to see you. We've been working together for probably 4 or 5 years now on some helicopter sales and things like that. But Rob, just give a little intro and what you're bringing to this conversation, because I do know that you all had a bit of a panel already and talking about this, and Rob, you were included. So I'm happy that you ended up joining.
Thanks, Halsey. It's been a long-time listener, first-time podcaster, so Perfect. It's great to be here with you. So a bit of myself and how I ended up here in this seat. So been working with HeliFlight for about 15 years. Got into aviation about 2007, a few thousand hours flying helicopters. Also have a winch operator's endorsement, so been out in firegrounds, working in some of those more unique environments. So I think where I come into it is at the operator level, but also a business level, where I've always loved working in HeliFlight. It's been a perfect synergy of being able to be a pilot, but also being able to work in the business side of it as well. So I think I've got a great perspective on where the synergy is, where those gaps in the market, where the lower end, or where the operators are going to be, where the end users are, but also where, from a business perspective, it's going to fit in and how it becomes a commercially viable aspect. So that's where I am, and that's why I'm here.
I'm really excited to talk about this synergy. I think when drones first kind of hit the scene, there was a lot of fear, specifically from, I call myself a meat servo, pilots, because the drone itself was, even early on, so capable compared to what a pilot can do, and obviously there's a lot of safety reasons why a drone might be better. But what we're starting to see is like a synergy, the two coming together to complete a mission. So I'm excited to talk about that. But I'm curious to hear 10, 11 years now, you start tinkering. You're not an engineer, by the way. That's crazy. That's impressive.
I didn't design it, though.
Okay.
So John and Nate did, and we have a team now, of course, too. Things have changed a lot over the last 10 years. And geopolitically, of course, over the last just 3 years, sure. The inertia that we get from the Ukraine conflict has just changed really everything. But there is a lot of synergies happening. When you think about, crewed aircraft, they've been around now for 100 years, and there's an evolution that happens with all technologies. And even if you take the drones out of it, there's electrification, there's automation, and those things are affecting, aircraft. And what these smaller units have really started to do is say, okay, where can we leverage small aircraft in a way that crewed aircraft just can't? It's not practical, it's not safe. And that's where we're starting to see more of that. There's a regulatory construct, of course, that has to be, fully baked out. We're still working and waiting on that, but that's where things are starting right now.
Obviously, with Zipline, you were probably very immersed within the regulatory side of it. Talk to me a little bit about where regulatory bodies are succeeding or maybe not succeeding in this specific space.
That's a great question.
Thank you. I wrote it myself.
Great question. And one that I don't quite have the answer to right now. We do have a couple of options as UAS operators. You always have Part 107, easy peasy pumpkin pie. It's line of sight. It's very limited, but there are certain waivers that you can get to some of those limitations. I know several operators are Part 135 Zipline included, and so that enables BVLOS operations in kind of a different framework. And we're all eagerly, patiently awaiting the release of Part 108, which we're hoping is going to be one of those things that really helps launch and excel and scale the UAS, the commercial delivery UAS operations.
And for people like myself and my listeners that might not be familiar with that part specifically, just touch on that a little bit and what that is, how it encompasses it.
Yeah, so it all hinges around a concept called beyond visual line of sight. So if you are flying within visual line of sight of the pilot, all good, right? But as soon as you want to take your drone a little bit further, so outside of the sight of the pilot, you are restricted. So with Part 108, that is kind of being nicknamed, the BB loss rule. And that's really what should, assuming that it's put together properly. We're still, like I said, eagerly awaiting it. But that should help unlock BB loss operations for commercial delivery. So they'd be able to operate it similar to a Part 107 framework without having to get waivers.
Yeah, very interesting. With you now at VAI, and of course the rebranding of VAI last year into Verticon here at the show, and then of course VAI to incorporate more vertical lift, which I'm guessing incorporates what we're seeing here. What is the organization doing to help support our lawmakers in creating this part and moving forward with this type of technology?
Yep. So yeah, it's an exciting time. Lots going on, and so there's lots of opportunity to get in on early discussions. One thing that we were very successful with is the Powered Lift SFAR response, if you will. So, again, Part 108 is not out yet, so we don't have a response team, so to speak. But with the Powered Lift SFAR, we were able to very quickly jump in, provide comments, assess the industry, assess where were things properly done, where do we need to continue the work, and really highlight and identify those. Just an example, again, not drone related, but with the Powered Lift SFAR, there's a concept within the Powered Lift SFAR where the aircraft would be able to take advantage of helicopter minimum altitudes if it's capable of auto rotation or an equivalent maneuver. Well, if you know anything about these eVTOL aircraft, they don't auto rotate.
Sure.
That is not the safest maneuver to get from the sky to the ground. And so we're trying to figure out, okay, what is an equivalent maneuver? We're really digging into the minutia of the regulation that eventually is going to be a really big deal and a really big hurdle for the operators, but we're trying to get ahead of that now and help clear those paths. And so we expect the same response for Part 108, where we're doing the legwork prior to Part 108 getting released, but once it's out, being able to really jump in, identify where there's some maybe struggle points, some places where we could help facilitate better discussions and prevent issues in the future. So really, it's very hands-on communication, organization with industry, and making sure that we're elevating that voice.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there and a lot to unpack. Glad it's you. Rob, talk to me a little bit about just your initial thoughts and introduction to drone, what it looks like in Australia. Are you guys doing anything currently at HeliFlight that's incorporating the two operations?
Yeah, we are. So as you alluded to earlier, Robinson have acquired Ascent. We work very closely with Robinson, obviously supporting about 40 aircraft per annum out of the sales team, and then probably another 60 per annum on the servicing side. So we see the synergy between the two. We're seeing sort of three different sectors, which is the individual operator, which may be, say, a utility operator doing some long lining. Then you're looking up to, say, the fireground, where you've got a few more aircraft working on a particular fire. And then, say, a harmony of aircraft working on like a crop spraying, where you're actually maybe each of those different sectors has a different type of use case. So to quickly touch on each, maybe the individual utility operator might take something like a Helix and take that out with them, like the same way they'd take their flight bag with a helmet, first aid kit, long lines, drone. You take that out, you can do an aerial recon of the site you're working. You might be able to do a flight, it's a little bit of an unusual area or challenging environment, you might be able to do a more detailed reconnaissance for power lines, for trees, obstacles. I know a few jobs I've worked up close to cliffs, if you can get in there and have a bit of a bird's eye view before you're actually on site with the task, that's sort of the level we're thinking on with the drones. Then maybe on the next size up with, say, the Spirit, which is the next size up that Ascent are working with, that you would have, say, a fireground where you've got one control aircraft, and then these multiple lower operators on the ground, all with drones that they can then basically give that information back to the central point, which then goes out to a more wider base fire control unit. So again, more eyes on the ground, a much more affordable way to do it, but not taking away from the helicopter. You're looking to complement. That's what we want to do at HeliFlight, is be able to complement these two technologies. And then all the way up to, say, Rotor AI, who are working on completely unmanned helicopters.
It's crazy.
And potentially if we wide open pastures of Australia, you can have 2 or 3 helicopters all working together to achieve the mission a lot faster, which is, at the end of the day, we're here for speed. That's what we're trying to do, more missions faster. So those are probably the 3 sectors that we're targeting and looking at to try and bring this synergy to the market.
Yeah, like I said earlier in the podcast, I think when drones first came out, there was a bit of a panic of they took our jobs. I think of the South Park episode, of course, with that. But like you just said, I mean, there's a true synergy where we can live together, we can work together and accomplish not only things quicker and faster, but doing it safer and having greater situational awareness, getting to see a different perspective. I think it's just, like you said, maybe something that just turns into a standard flight bag item, and it's just another tool that a pilot can put in the toolbox. So I did have a drone, as I told you. Mine looked a little bit different. It was, quadcopter.
Yep.
This is a coaxial design.
Yep.
So what was the inspiration of that? How did you, again, not engineer, but
Nope.
obviously you understand something about engineering, of course, and what was it about the coaxial design that you thought, man, that's a light bulb?
Sure.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability, so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Sure. So, coaxials have been around for decades on full-scale helicopters. Back when Sikorsky invented the sort of Western version, he put a tail rotor on for the anti-torque mechanism. And over in the Eastern, section for the world, in Russia, they were basically saying, that's crazy, we're going to do 2 rotors. And Sikorsky looked at that and said, that's crazy, that's too complicated. So we basically had 2 diverging paths, but the coaxial's really been around for a long time. The origin story for Ascent Aerosystems, though, again, John and Nate Maringer down in Arizona, they were working for a company called Orbital Flight Sciences, which makes rockets and missiles. And on the weekends, they like to go cliff climbing. And the problem that they had,
as people do,
not me, but as people do, and as they would sort of head down the trails, they would have to track off of these like main trails to find the cliff face. And these side trails to the cliff faces were a lot less traveled, so they were a lot less conspicuous. And what they found was that they often had to retrace their steps. No, that's not it. We got to go this way. We got to go back. And in Arizona, they needed to start early and finish early because the afternoon thunderstorms would come, and you don't want to be on a cliff when you've got thunderstorms going on. So they said, geez, if we only had an aerial perspective, this is like 2012, 2013. So like if only we had an aerial perspective, we would be able to see this really quickly, because when they did get to the cliff face and climb up, you could look down really easily and see the path.
Sure.
So they said, okay, let's see what's out there. And they weren't radio control airplane or like helicopter operators. And so they bought a consumer drone, an early consumer drone. And they found it was just big and bulky and fragile and hard to carry with you. And it was a question of either bringing that along or bringing along things like ropes and water and stuff like that. So they said, okay, we're not going to do this. There's got to be a better way. So they clean sheeted the idea, and they came up with this little cylindrical form factor. And they're aerodynamic engineers, or aeronautical engineers rather, so they knew how to do this. But they started from scratch, and they had Arduino boards and things like that to program the autopilot. And that's about where I got to them. Now, when someone says, okay, so why the coax? Well, the laws of physics and the laws of aerodynamics favor the coax. That's just sort of known science. The challenge at this scale is that, really before us, nobody's been able to crack anything more than just a basic hover. So, hovering a coax is pretty straightforward. If you go into a mall and you buy a child's helicopter toy, most of those are going to be a coaxial. They don't have a tail rotor. But it's a very different, very simple design, and it doesn't move forward all that well. We can do, on the Spirit, for example, we can do 60, 70, even 80 miles an hour over the ground, and we can stop in a really short distance. We can make really tight turns, and that's all a function of this proprietary, really simple fixed-pitch, single-swatch rotor blade setup that we did. So the other benefits, though, is the cylindrical form factor, of course, is much more compact. It's inherently strong. We put a lot of things in cylinders. If you think about, fuel tanks, and we put, gases and things, because it's a really simple geometric and very strong shape. And it's also really easy to seal against the environment. Things like O-rings are really simple to insert. And when you compare that to like a quadcopter, if you try to make it compact, you're folding legs and adding all kinds of weight and complexity. So we don't have to do that. So what we end up with is, for the scale or for the size, it's more compact, more high performance. We can fly in, pretty much any weather, and we can fly further, faster, longer, and carry more payload. And everything's a trade-off if you're talking about aircraft, and if you can really do all those things, what a great thing. So that's how we ended up with it, and what we've cracked now is how to make them really small. We've got versions that are even smaller than 250 grams, all the way up to the NX30, which is about 30 pounds. And we can go larger, from there.
And this was the news yesterday.
This is that.
So
yep, this is the Helius. That's right.
So talk to me just a little bit about the Helius. I don't actually know what I'm looking at, but
okay,
I can tell you that it feels light.
Yep.
But yeah, talk to me about the technology. It looks like a very small package, but reading the press release, it's a small package that can perform a variety of different mission sets.
Yep.
So talk to me about that.
Sure. So this is going to outperform something like a Mavic. Okay. So 250. Actually, it's less than 250 grams. Starting from the bottom, it's got a 12 megapixel 4K low light Sony sensor on it. That's all fixed in it, so it can be sealed. We can zoom and we can tilt using cropping functions. But again, really resilient and really rugged. Onboard is a Voxel 2 Mini. That's a Qualcomm RB5 chip. So really powerful onboard computer with optical sensors to provide obstacle avoidance capabilities when you're flying, so you don't run into things. And then the combination of these also provides the ability to do things like GPS denied navigation. So we can fly where there's no GPS. It can figure out where it is and also fly back. We can do things like AI-enabled functions like object classification, identification, and tracking. So you can point to a car on your screen or a person on the screen and say track that, and it'll follow it. Plus, there's all kinds of sort of user-defined capabilities that a computer can provide. So if you want to do swarming, if you want to do other things like that, it's ready to go on this. Otherwise, from a performance perspective, 45 plus miles an hour. We've been flying earlier versions of this for really over a year. Right now we're saying 30 minutes minimum flight endurance, but we're going to get at least 40 plus, probably more. 45 miles an hour too. Quick change battery, quick change blades, so really convenient, and you can literally put it in your pocket. Yeah,
it's incredible. I mean, it really is compact. Super cool. Rob, talk to me a little bit about just hearing the announcement. What was your initial gut on this, and where's your kind of mind taking you in learning about the Helius here at Verticon?
Yeah, the Helius, this is a product which took us a bit by surprise in terms of the way it's come together. So kind of the quality of build along with the actual capability are two things that are hard to bring together. So you've always got to sacrifice something, quality, speed, cost, whatever it is, one of those you can't have all of them. But I think we've actually been able to put it all together in one place. I think for us, the swarm technology is great. We're still looking on how that integrates with a helicopter system. And that's something that the whole industry is developing, that if you have one helicopter, can you have 5 of these, 6 of these, 100 of these out performing tasks transferring information back, either live or collected for later on. So that's something that the industry's still got to come together and find out how it's going to work best. And that's sort of what I say to the audience everywhere I go is, you come up with the ideas. We're here to listen. And that's the great thing about my job is I'm out there listening to multiple different operators with different perspectives. I can't have everyone's perspective, but I can listen to everybody. So bring your ideas to us, and then we can help overcome. Amber's got, say, from a regulator point of view, Peter from a design and infrastructure point of view, and then for myself, it's a gathering research. So for us, we want to be consultants back to the industry, but that goes both ways, listening and then presenting. So projects like this is where we start that foundation and start the conversation.
Peter and Rob have now mentioned this term swarm, and I'm conceptualizing in my head what that means in regards to this, but Amber, if you don't mind touching a little bit on that, and then some of the, we can all, of course, jump in as well. What are some of the other applications, maybe some recent events, different fires or things like that, where you could actually see a swarm-like technology that could have really made an impact?
Yeah, so, and I also have some questions for Peter. Maybe I'll answer your question and then take over your podcast.
Hey, heck yeah.
Let
me just sit right back. This is nice.
I just have a couple curious questions about this drone in particular. But to talk about swarm very quickly, briefly, easily, have you ever seen a swarm of bees?
That's what I mean. When I hear swarm, I think of swarm of bees for sure.
Yes. So you think a lot and moving in the same direction, right? They're not all over the place, kind of doing their own thing. It is a orchestrated swarm of drones.
Yeah, a coordinated effort.
Correct. You might think of some of the light shows that we've seen recently. Those, I think, have some level of swarm technology, but essentially it enables coordinated flight between all of the drones.
Yeah, it's super cool. What are some of the applications in recent current events, Peter, that you thought, man, if we were just there yet with this swarm technology? And then Amber, I'm going to let you take over as well.
Please.
Yeah, I'll touch on a couple, but I'm sure the rest of the panel also has lots of examples. But one of the ones that we like to talk a lot about is the rural firefighting opportunities, right? So you think about what's happening in California, and there's both the strategic management of the conditions around wildfires and the tactical once they've started. So the strategic part is helping, for example, utilities use drones, which they do, but use drones to identify where are risky areas. So where is there, foliage growth into the power line area, right? Where you don't need to have this, helicopter operation where you're using a really expensive asset. You can use a drone to do that first part. Then from a tactical perspective, using swarms of drones to identify and map and see the progression of a fire and to help the crews on the ground. They can even provide, for example, communication relays, because in a lot of circumstances over the years, firefighting crews on the ground have been lost because of the loss of signal, because they're behind hills and valleys and things like that. So that's where drones can do a lot of different things. The payloads can be, usually they're cameras and things like that, but there's also other applications you could stick on them. So those are some of the examples, but I'd love to hear some thoughts from Rob too.
Yeah, so the two areas that kind of come to mind for us is, say, agriculture and the fireground. So I might quickly touch on the fireground side of it as well. Coming from working with national parks in Australia for some time, getting that exposure again, where you've got multiple different crews on the ground. So almost a bit different to what Amber was saying in terms of the swarm. I'm thinking more of an individual operator that brings data back to a central point. So you're sort of working separately, but then collaborating back to that central helicopter. So that's where that integration of helicopter use still works, but you say you have a swarm of individuals working out at different posts. And then again, safety. This is where the safety comes into it, which is what Peter was touching on about not getting people stranded or stuck in a situation. And they've got that, say, rock climbing experience where you've got all the vision from above to be able to make a good decision on which way the wind's coming, which way the fire's moving. Is it how far up that pass is it towards you? Do you have time to continue fighting, or is it time to move out and get to a safer location? So that was one of the areas. The other one that we're looking at is in agriculture. Again, I see this as part of your flight bag. And we've got operators that get up early in the morning before first light, or just at the break of first light, who don't necessarily want to go flying at that point, but might be able to launch a drone, get up in the sky, get maybe a heat map of the area they're working at. And I mean, again, we're looking with cattle that are stuck under trees, spread across a vast paddock. And if you can get up high, get a heat map of where those cattle are, you'll then be able to be much more efficient on your muster. So therefore, again, reducing your costs as an operator and getting the job done more efficiently.
Sounds super cool. I promise I'm going to let you ask your questions, but now I'm just spurring some more.
Of course.
With this idea of using, say, these drones during a fire to help map and see the spread and containment and et cetera, I see that as completely viable. I guess what my question is the technology there already, or are we close to where it can also be done safely? Because obviously these are very small, probably very hard to see if, let's say that I'm operating a helicopter in an already very intense environment, say like a fire, where there's lots going on, there's lots of other coordination. Will these be slightly, I guess, I don't know if this is the right word, but self-sufficient in the fact that they can see and avoid and kind of stay away from the aircraft?
Verticon was epic in Dallas and delivered big with more than 600 companies, 15,000 attendees, and the latest technology. Next stop, Atlanta. Lottery 1 opens April 21st. Mark your calendar for the world's largest vertical aviation show. Verticon, powered by VAI.
Well, what you're talking about is a much more complicated topic of airspace management, where we essentially provide hardware that needs to be able to support those infrastructure elements. So we don't make the airspace deconfliction software, but we need to be able to plug into it. Now, the thing about the Helius and the reason why we designed it to be the size that it is across the world, for the most part, 250 grams has been established as the floor of what sort of constitutes a hazard. And so kind of by definition, that means having something less than 249 grams is essentially less risky and inherently not catastrophically dangerous to others.
Sure.
Whether you're talking about other aircraft in the air or other individuals on the ground. Now, as an active pilot, I don't want to be running into anything in the air.
Of course.
And so it is on the operator to separate their activities from other activities in the area. But we designed it around that sort of an application so that it can fit in as seamlessly as possible as that ecosystem evolves.
Yeah, it's super cool. All right, Amber. I know that you have some more questions.
I've been building up more.
More questions.
I've been building up more questions.
Hey, please take over. I'll just sit back.
Have a cup of
coffee.
coffee.
Take a little snooze. No, I'm kidding. This is awesome.
That's fine. Can I?
Absolutely.
Can I pick it up?
Please, yeah.
I'm just curious about a couple of things. Is this one intended to carry any kind of payload?
So when you say carry, like an external load?
Yeah.
So no.
Okay.
So everything under 250 grams, you are fighting for every gram, right?
Of course.
And so, for example, our payload on this is the camera, and it's the AI-powered compute system inside. That's essentially the payload that we optimized for. You can add other things. The aircraft will carry more, but now you're over 250 grams, so your whole sort of universe has changed.
Sure.
But what I will say is that this is the first in a series, right? We think of all of our aircraft much like Robinson does. An R-22, an R-44, 66. They're all platforms, and you can use them for VIP transport. You can use them for ag. You can use them for training. We're really the same way. If you wanted to put a different kind of payload on there, whether it's a different kind of command and control communication system or a different kind of sensor, we can do that. Now, we won't do it, as a one-off, but for example, we know the military is not going to buy a system that uses a cellular connectivity package like this one has. But we know what kind of radio to put in, and we know some people will want to have IR sensors on there. We already have an IR package for this too. We're not going to roll it out in the initial product, but those are the kind of payload swap outs that we're going to do. What I will say is the battery pack will be removable.
Okay.
And that's going to have certain features in it that are not necessary for some operators, but are for others. So, for example, remote ID. There probably will be the sort of lighting for operation at night is not something everybody needs. So that'll probably go in the battery pack too. So you'll have a different set of battery packs for different operations. So
have that ability to have the lighting, have different payload. I guess options.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Yeah, excellent. The other question that I had.
You're doing great.
Yeah. Sorry. The other question that I had is, Are you marketing or thinking about an individual consumer as well as like helicopter fleets and folks that are already also flying?
That's a great question.
Something like,
Yeah.
is this like, would I possibly buy this instead of like a DJI? Not to put any competition in this, but
Well, we think this is a much better product. Look, they
Sure.
make a terrific system. I mean, they've been doing this for a long time. They have a lot of resources that a company like us, a year ago, we were 10 people.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of resources. We think this is going to be a better system overall. Right now, we don't have plans to pursue the consumer market. Right, the consumer market is a very specific sort of a recreational user, but that might change in time. Right, one of the things that provides you is the opportunity to have massive scale because the demand is largely there. The consumer market, though, as much as the industrial market and the defense market is growing, the consumer market is pretty flat when it comes to drones now. It's been saturated. So unless there's a paradigm shift, like for example, Chinese drones are banned in the U.S. even for for civilian use, there's likely not going to be a huge opportunity to try to move them out. They have huge advantages in cost, and that's going to be hard to beat. So the consumer market, no, but the individual operator, yes, and that could mean as simple as a local fire department, a local police department, where they're operating 1 or 2 or 5 of these drones.
Okay.
I have a follow-up to that, too.
I'm done with my question.
I thought they were great questions. Hey,
Thank
please,
you.
by all
I'll be
means.
here all day.
This is an open discussion
Yeah.
for all. I'm happy not to be the ringleader, to be honest. But obviously not for consumer use, as you're saying in that, but people will be using. How do you control the drone?
Yeah, well, there's lots of different ways. So the initial version, like I said, is going to be 4G. I was going to say 4K, 4G LTE. So it's basically connected to the internet, where you've got cellular connectivity for the aircraft's environment, and you can control it really anywhere you can get an internet connection. So latency, of course, the time between the control input and the vehicle's movement, that's a factor. And LTE for the most part provides a pretty good solution in most places that they're needed. Not everywhere. So we're going to be also offering traditional, probably 2.4 gigahertz frequency radios. There's a wide range of those in terms of what are the costs, whether there's a Wi-Fi waveform or others. And again, that's where we have to sort of figure out where the demand is. When we start to think about, okay, what kind of product do we want to make? We start with our ears, not our eyes or our pens, because like Rob was saying, we need to listen to the ConOps, the concepts of operation that the customer base really need. What are the problems that they need to solve? And some of those are defined by, well, I need this kind of connectivity. But as far as how to control it, basically this initial one, whether it's a tablet or a computer, either one. And there is a demand also for people using controllers with sticks. This is actually really designed to be something that's completely automated, so it plugs into a network operation, not an individual operator. You were talking about meat servos before, right? So meat servos inherently don't scale, right? When you talk about drones, if it's a one operator, one drone, or even one operator, 5 or 10 drones, that's harder to scale. What you need is a network where it's all automated. Lots of complexity to that, airspace deconfliction, regulatory constructs and all that, but that's where it's all going. And at the end of the day, we won't have people operating sticks on drones because, again, that just won't scale.
Totally makes sense, and I believe you when you say it's the future. I mean, I really do believe that I am looking at the next generation of where this industry is going, and I'm very excited to see. One of the interesting things that surprised me, actually, was when I heard that Robinson made this acquisition. I was talking to David before last year's Expo, now VAI, Verticon.
Good job.
Thank you. And he teased he was doing an M&A, a merger and acquisition, and my mind started going. I was thinking maybe it's another OEM. I just had lots of thoughts.
Sure.
I think there were some rumors swirling around too. It was all kind of funny, and then it was you guys. And so I'm just curious how did obviously Robinson is doing crazy things right now, and I mean that in a great way.
Yeah.
The transformation of Robinson helicopters in the past 12 months is insane.
It's tremendous. Yeah.
And it's obviously big shout out to David, but it's a shout out to his entire team, to the existing members that were there before David. I mean, they're all just coming together for this unified vision, and so much is happening. But talk to me about how that relationship started. How did those conversations even begin? And what has that partnership been like for you guys?
It's time for your Heli Life giveaway secret word. Listen up and remember this word because you'll need it to enter for a chance to win exclusive Heli Life gear. Ready? This episode's secret word is lift. Visit contest.verticalhelicast.com to enter the secret word.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where I still have to kind of pinch myself to say, really, I can't believe we got this done. Robinson, of course, is a legend in the general aviation space. They've been around for 50 years. Anybody that knows anything about helicopters knows Robinson is how most people in the Western world anyway started out learning how to fly helicopters. And what Frank Robinson and his family eventually figured out how to do is to make a really rugged, lightweight, high performance, system platform, utility platform to provide a really wide range of operating capabilities. And when the leadership changed over, David has the foresight to say, look, robotics and aircraft are converging, and it's going to converge on the rotorcraft industry too. So how do we take things like electrification, automation, and bring them into the Robinson family? Because at the end of the day, 20 years from now, 100 low-lead, Jet A powered, helicopters that have really defined the company for the last 50 years will only be able to be part of the equation. And so we've got to do something else. So huge credit and kudos to him to having that sort of scope of vision. I never met David. We were introduced by a mutual friend, and we started talking in the fall of 23. David had a mandate to change things. And so we started talking, and it was very clear there was a number of things that we were aligned with. Number one, if you think about the product scope, we can now make a really high-quality rotorcraft from under 250 grams to the R88 and everything in between. We've got electrification, expertise. We've got automation expertise, and there's also a broad range of products in between our largest drone and their smallest helicopter. And eventually, the R88 is likely going to be automated too, just like the 66 and the 44 will be. So there's that sort of product breadth, but there's also the teaming that goes with the two, right? They're complementary. That's going to evolve over time. The hardware integration of small drones into larger helicopters is not trivial. It's been demonstrated. We know we can launch a drone from a helicopter, but there's a lot more to it than that. So that'll evolve over the next few years. There's also the manufacturing capability that they have, right? They've been making helicopters in an FAA certificated manufacturing facility for 50 years. And when we think about the evolution of drones and the operation of drones at scale, we believe that the regulator is going to continue to play a very important role. They're going to define the standards against which these vehicles are built and allowed into the national airspace system, whether here in the U.S. or around the world. So it's not going to be the kind of Wild West that it has been, right? You're not going to have hobby drones that are going to be, flying around with manned aircraft. So we believe it's going to be easier for a company like us to move into the drone space from a certificated aircraft heritage than it is from a hobby heritage or a consumer heritage up into that regulated space. So that's another piece of it. So that was the initial thesis, those three elements, and they've been terrific so far to have the resources of a company like Robinson, and the reputation and the credibility just provides us with some significant advantages, certainly over where we were a year ago.
Sure. Rob, obviously you've very integrated with Robinson Helicopters. In fact, that's how you and I know each other. What was your initial thoughts when you heard about this partnership, this acquisition?
I reckon my thoughts would probably be similar to yours. And so I'm speculating here, but we're both helicopter guys. I think we think similar. And for me, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Like, how am I going to integrate this? What have I got to do? What am I missing? And David's, as I say, he's a forward thinker. He's 5 years ahead of me, maybe 55 years ahead. Either way, he's got that vision that Peter was talking about. And it's taken me some time to download that, take it on board and figure out what are we going to do next? Because I'm also very much a forward thinker on how HeliFlight, how the Robinson product and the broader space expands, changes, and I think Peter summed it up in terms of how those two, robotics, automation, aviation, they're all coming together. Either you get on or you get left behind. And I don't want to have to get on. I want to get on.
Yeah.
And I think the next 10 to 15 years of aviation is we're at the pinnacle of a new high. The renaissance of fixed wing and jumbo jets and things like that. Like I was at the Museum of Flight. I thought this is an interesting fact. Museum of Flight in the UK a couple of weeks back, and they had the Wright brothers fixed wing underneath a Concorde. What do you reckon the technology age gap between those two is? I'll just leave that ponder for a second. 80 years. 80 years between the Wright brothers and a Concorde.
That's crazy.
That's incredible. So we're now in that next phase. I think we're going into another part of the bell curve where we start going up, and it's a bit more like a hockey stick. So I think we're really at the beginning of the hockey stick, and now's the time to really kind of capture this data, bring it on, learn about it, and start to integrate it.
I feel like for me personally, it kind of made me take drones a little bit more seriously, to be honest. I figured, like Rob said, obviously David's a very forward thinker. David has a very interesting mind in a great way. And so my thought was, if he's supporting that, then there's something that we all need to kind of open our eyes a little bit and kind of, like Rob said, get on board. So I'm excited to continue to see what is the kind of the day-to-day relationship. I know that I was actually at Robinson a month ago or so.
Okay.
And I saw your drones being
You
built
saw 'em?
there.
Okay, good.
I went through and got to say hi to some of the folks there. And,
Great.
But what is the daily interaction with your team, with the Robinson team, with you and David and the other Robinson executives?
Sure. Well, to summarize it, basically all of the R&D and the development stuff is going to stay in Massachusetts where we got started. And all of the production is moving out to California. The sort of test that we have is if it's something that the design is finished and we're making lots of it, it goes to California. So the Spirit core, which is really the central part of the aircraft, that's now all fully manufactured out there. And the day-to-day conversations between the teams is really about supply chain and quality and that kind of stuff. With respect to the stuff that's further upstream, we're really partnering as much as we can with a broader Robinson network. Again, we're in listen mode on a lot of the things that are really going to define the product strategy for the next few years. One of the things that we've been sort of teasing a little bit over the last few days is that the Helius is an important part of a system, and at the end of the day, just like you can't really have a person holding the sticks, you can't really have a person out there launching the drone either. So stay tuned for some more ground-based automated launch, recovery, and reset systems that we think are going to completely redefine how people think about what drones can do, both when they're flying and when they're not. And there's a lot of fun stuff coming down the pike there. But otherwise, we've got regular contact between the teams. Product development and strategy is really defined by us when it comes to the actual drones. But there's a lot of alignment, with respect to how we integrate for the helicopter, part.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And Amber, from the regulatory standpoint and kind of where you come into the picture, what is the relationship with Ascent and Robinson? Does that play into maybe helping accelerate some of the red tape and certification and integration of drones?
Well, it certainly does give an extra sense of legitimacy, not only for the public but also for the regulators. Folks at the FAA are familiar with Robinson. They've been working with them for years. They understand the rigorous procedures that they have when they're manufacturing their aircraft. And so I think, in theory, from that perspective, it should make certain efforts go a little smoother. Now, when we're talking about operations and we're talking about how folks are using these drones, depends on the use case and it depends on the operator and what they're trying to do. But I do think that having that relationship, that partnership, being built in-house at Robinson, I can't imagine that it would do anything but help certain certification processes go a bit smoother.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think being able to come into the picture and being with an existing OEM with so much history, right? That's something that David and I have talked about. 50 years of certifying aircraft.
Wild.
When it comes to aircraft and aircraft certification, I trust that David, with his past at Bell and now here at Robinson, I really feel like if anyone understands certification, it's David. So it seems like you guys are certainly on the right team.
Yeah, we are, and we're 100% aligned too. And if you think about, one of the most remarkable achievements in the last 100 years in human sort of history is the safety level that we have in aviation sort of writ large, right? And that safety mandate is going to continue to really define how the regulators around the world look at drones and integrating them. Some might be a little bit more sort of permissive on stuff, but or sooner. But at the end of the day, it's all about safety. And we think there will be a certification standard of some kind for these aircraft. And if it's a full-on type certification, just like we have to do for an R22 and R44, then we have that advantage. We also have the history to try to influence and sort of guide the conversation, whether it's like an ASTM or some other standards-based process. But that's going to, I think, establish most of the pacing for the evolution of the industry over the next probably 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, totally makes sense to me. One of the things that I had in my notes here, and admittedly I don't really understand, I don't know what it is, to be honest, because I'm not in this space. So I'm curious to hear a little bit about this UAS, this cleared blue list. Talk to me about that, to my listeners. What exactly is that? What does that mean for defense? Just educate me on that.
Thank you to our sponsor, Instrom Helicopter Corporation. Instrom Helicopter Corporation is proud to announce the new 480B Elite, fully loaded with all the top-of-the-line features, including the Garmin G500H, electric AC, Genesis 3-axis autopilot, exclusive paint and interior, and more. Q3 delivery dates are available, but opportunities are limited. Secure your spot at instromhelicopter.com.
Sure. Do you want to start, or should I take that? I'm happy to.
Please, go right ahead, Peter.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
So the blue list was started back, I think it was around 2020 or so. The U.S. Department of Defense had the need for sort of a new type of UAV system. They'd been operating fixed-wing Ravens and other systems like that for quite a number of years, and as quadcopters became more sort of established on the stage on the consumer side, they said, okay, how do we integrate this? And so they started putting together requirements, and there were 6 companies that were initially invited to join a procurement for what they called a short-range reconnaissance aircraft, or the SRR program. That eventually evolved into the Blue UAS 1.0 cleared list. And so there were 4 manufacturers that had gone through this process, and the DoD said, look, these guys are approved to purchase even if they're not procured at a large scale. This was all due to sensitivities around covered country components being included in consumer drones that were being used in the DoD. And the covered countries being China and Russia, among others.
Sure.
And so the industry was growing rapidly, and there was more of a need. And at the same time, there was also a presidential order, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2020, which established criteria for certain components that had to be approved or not from a covered country in order to be used in a system that could be procured by the government. They were sort of parallel, but it was at the component level rather than the system level. DIU, the Defense Innovation Unit, was established or was assigned the task of sort of organizing and progressing this whole blue program, and so they came out with a Blue 2.0 program where they invited certain companies to sort of apply, and Ascent Aerosystems applied with the Spirit, and you go through a rigorous review and cybersecurity probing and testing and all that. And if you make it through all that, you get put on the Blue UAS list. That was then changed again this last summer, where the Blue program was essentially cleared off. Companies were invited to submit whatever products they wanted, both completed systems and also individual components for the Blue refresh. And that basically was finished just a few weeks ago. They published the new Blue UAS cleared list for both systems and for components. And the components are things like cameras and autopilots and ground control stations and things like that. So that's a summary. Blue UAS was established only for the U.S. Department of Defense. The challenge that it represents is that it's really the only security standard that's been sort of out there for users to say, okay, I want to buy a safe system or a secure system. What can I do? And without other established standards, that's been the default, even now down to the state and local level. And that's a challenge because most of the Blue systems are pretty expensive, and that's a function of the requirements that the DoD has layered on for things like communications and cameras and things. So the AUVSI, user forum basically established the green list as an alternative. I won't go too far into the details of that, but right now what you have is sort of a challenging set of circumstances for both users and for OEMs. DIU has been tasked with a very difficult mission. They're very hardworking, very dedicated people that almost have an impossible task to try to solve for the DoD's challenges and requirements, when in fact the entire industry is turning to that list as the reference when it was really never meant to be that. Long answer, but
no, it was beautifully put, almost as though you've been through the process. It sounds like the spirit.
I love it.
The spirit is on the list.
It is not.
It is not on the list.
So the spirit was on the list.
It was on the list.
Yeah, the spirit. Okay. Candidly, the spirit was on the list. We were invited to submit for the refresh this last summer. Mm-hmm. We actually elected not to.
Okay.
So we decided we weren't going to continue with the program for a number of reasons.
Sure.
The DoD does not have to only buy off the Blue list. They can buy separately. They just have to. The operator, the ultimate user, has to get their own authority to operate those drones that are not on the Blue list. Mm-hmm. And we're finding that the kinds of customers that we are attracting don't necessarily need the Blue system, and there's a lot of uncertainty about the refresh cycle. What happens to a customer who purchases a system that's Blue this year and not Blue next year? It's creating a lot of questions, and there will be a cycle to it, so we're going to reconsider that. The Helius is not going to be submitted for the Blue list in its current form because it's got a cellular connection that's not something that DoD would need. Now, it is NDAA compliant, so everything on there's no reason why it couldn't be. But again, we don't think that in its current form or in its initial form that's going to be a system that most of the DoD will want.
Gotcha. Not the market.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up today's conversation, I'm just curious to kind of do a quick little recap and a roundtable. Start with you, Rob. What are you most excited for with this integration of drones and this synergy that you spoke of earlier on the show between drones and helicopters?
The most exciting part is going to be the part we don't know. That's the best. That's the most exciting part. That's what gets me involved in this program. The reason we got in it, we see the vision, but we don't know that final end use case. And I want to find it, and it's out there, and then it's going to explode out there. So we want to make sure that we're at the front of that opportunity. So it's the unknown that actually gets me excited.
Yeah, I like that answer.
Yeah.
Amber?
Man, that was a good answer. How do I follow that?
You
Come
don't.
on.
You can
Come
do it.
on.
I believe in you.
No, I have to say, I'm really excited that, and we've seen it with VAI, going from, okay, we're focused on helicopters to really reaching out our arms, taking the whole industry kind of in our embrace, right? And it feels like others in the industry, like Robinson, are doing the same thing, like saying, how else can we use these new technologies to improve what we're doing, to improve our offering to customers, and ultimately the public, right? We're thinking about your capabilities to help in search and rescue. We're talking about just personally thinking about how I can be a better pilot, and if I can use something like this to do reconnaissance versus, flying my helicopter out somewhere, that's a win-win for everybody involved. And so, yes, agreed. My little mind can't even comprehend what's coming next, but it's really exciting to see folks working together and saying we are one industry. We're not helicopters and drones and eVTOLs. We're all in the same airspace. We can all learn from each other. We can all embrace in this beautiful world of aviation, and it's only going to make it better. We're only going to see improvements in our quality of life as pilots and as individual citizens. And so I'm just excited to see everybody sitting around the campfire singing Kumbaya right now. I don't know.
Everyone's playing very nicely
Exactly.
in the sandbox, right?
Exactly.
Well, I think that's important, right? I think that there was that awkward period where it was kind of them and us.
Yeah.
And it just felt uncomfortable. And there's still things about it, admittedly, that make me feel uncomfortable with some things, right? So I too agree with both of what you guys said, and the unknown is exciting. And I'm just committed to the idea that this is truly the future. So whether we love it or don't love it or somewhere in the middle, it's kind of like, well, I think we all need to start adapting to this new synergy, this new working together. Peter, what is your 5-year, 10-year vision for Ascent, the relationship that you have with Robinson? And if we're podcasting in 5 years, what are we talking about?
When we're actually podcasting in 5 years, because I'm sure we will be.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to hold you to it.
Look, I mean, this is technology that's here to stay. And if there was any question, that was retired entirely 3 years ago with the invasion of the Ukraine. So, drones are good for two things: moving things from A to B and collecting information, full stop. And these things, they enable capabilities that we simply didn't have before. And as far as Ascent Aerosystems is concerned, we're just super excited to be part of the Robinson family, to expand and build on the heritage that they've built, and to really, I think, take our place in the sort of ecosystem that this industry is quickly becoming. We're going to be able to do amazing things with this technology over the next few years. And when we're sitting down in, let's say, 5 years, I would say we've got a product available for probably STC deployment on existing 44s and 22s that allow the operators to deploy these aircraft from these aircraft and to do things that we just never really even thought we could do.
Super cool. I'm really excited for that conversation. I'm excited to see where the innovation goes. The world needs people like you, people that think a little bit outside the box, and then obviously you find the right people that can help turn your vision into an actual viable product. So very cool, Peter. Very lucky to have this conversation, not just with you, but Rob and Amber, of course. You guys bring so much insight. This is admittedly a conversation that I've never had before. And so it was fun. I was a little nervous, actually, going into it because it's just so outside of my scope. So hopefully I did all right to the listeners. And, of course, to the listeners, thank you guys so much for continuing to listen to the Helicopter Podcast. It enables me to be in the conversation with people that are clearly much smarter than I am, and I'm completely okay with that because then I can gain knowledge and become a little bit smarter myself and learn about new things and really become more well-rounded. To MHM Publishing, thank you so much for this platform, and we're just having so much fun filming these live from Verticon. This is year 2 of doing this, and it's been a great response, and I'm just excited to continue doing it. Guys, thanks so much for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's been great.
Please stay tuned for a final word from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Robinson Helicopter Company, the choice for unrivaled safety and reliability so you can accomplish any mission with confidence. For more than half a century, Robinson has been at the forefront of the helicopter industry. From the R-22 to the R-66 turbine, Robinson makes helicopters accessible so more people can accomplish more missions. Climb higher. For additional information, visit www.robinsonheli.com.
Verticon was epic in Dallas and delivered big with more than 600 companies, 15,000 attendees, and the latest technology. Next stop, Atlanta. Lottery 1 opens April 21st. Mark your calendar for the world's largest vertical aviation show. Verticon, powered by VAI. Thank you to our sponsor, Instrom Helicopter Corporation. Instrom Helicopter Corporation is proud to announce the new 480B Elite, fully loaded with all the top-of-the-line features, including the Garmin G500H, electric AC, Genesis 3-axis autopilot, exclusive paint and interior, and more. Q3 delivery dates are available, but opportunities are limited. Secure your spot at instromhelicopter.com.